What is up, guys? It is time. It is bright early here, but we are ready for a little MLB strategy show to go through the finer points of today's 13-game MLB main slate that'll be coming up in a few hours later today. But I'm Chris Spags, joined by a man who I haven't had in the early morning show, so hopefully his brain function will be there more than mine is. He's Gundacker. How you doing, buddy?
I'm not a morning guy, but I do got a bang ready to go, so hopefully that'll help.
Yeah, just chug them throughout the show. I feel like that'll be good for content as well. But we appreciate all you guys for being here with us. And make sure you hit that like button and, of course, subscribe to the channel because we are doing content from bright and early in the morning, whether it be on the East Coast or the West Coast, till all hours of the night, as our producer Tyler could tell you after he had to do an MMA show with our pals Jason Floyd and Pete the Heat last night, very much at nighttime. So it all goes on here on the channel. So make sure you are subscribed to check out all that we're doing here. Also, feel free to check out our free premium tool of the day, which is going to be the MLB player projections. So you could actually build lineups today using that data on the site for yourself. Obviously, that is normally part of an Awesemo Plus package, and you can get that for yourself by saving 25% off and using the promo code MLB Strategy Show at awesemo.com/join. But if you're a person who's been reluctant to dive into the pool here, go check out the player projections today for free on the site, and you can see what we're talking about. And also make sure, actually, there's a good cross promotion. You can also go use those when you're playing over at PrizePicks, which is the simplest fantasy game on the market. You can say goodbye to Sharks lineup optimizers and mass multi-entry. All you have to do is pick 2, 3, 4, or 5 players available on the board to go over or under their projected fantasy score. And if you correctly select a 5-player lineup, you can get yourself up to 10x your entry fee over at PrizePicks. They have the NFL, they have the NBA, they have esports, they have MLB, they have pretty much everything you can think of over at PrizePicks, and they allow you to combine your picks across sports, all the sports they have available, basically like a cross-sport parlay. So it's a fun way to play over there. So if you've been frustrated by the DraftKings and FanDuels of the world, go play over at PrizePicks. Download the mobile app in the App Store or on a Google Play today and make your first deposit to get an instant deposit match of up to $100 when you use the promo code Awesemo. Simplify daily fantasy with PrizePicks today. Gundacker, we're going to go game by game here, but I'll ask you, it's kind of an ugly pitching slate. So that's the one observation I have, but anything jump out to you in terms of an overarching approach to this slate?
Now, last night it felt like pitching was a little rough pre-flop as well. And then, of course, every pitcher that has been good always has this cloud hanging over them. You know what I'm talking about last couple of weeks. So we just got to play with the cards we're dealt. Even though like last night was a little rough free flop, there were still some gems at the end of the night. So I think we just have to accept that there are ranges of outcomes that we need to attack today, because even a team like the Dodgers can get no hit.
Yeah, that is a good point. Lots of weird ones there, and some that we talked about. Nick Pivetta was the one yesterday that I had a feeling in my heart that I shouldn't ignore him, and he ended up pitching probably one of the best games of his career. And we'll see how that goes as the weather heats up for him. But shout out to all the regulars in chat as well. I see Brian Claremont. I see, of course, the news god's always here. Blitz, Mike Campbell should have. If I'm not giving you a shout here, 3-run shot. Appreciate all of you guys for being here and hanging with us as we always do. But let's get into that game by game where we got Baltimore getting 4 implied runs going against Alek Manoah. Manoah in the year, 27.3% K rate now, has faced just shy of 100 batters, and he's been doing a pretty good job for the strikeouts. The issue is that he's given up a 13% barrel ball rate, 17-degree launch angle. It's probably going to be problematic the more he plays games in this Buffalo Park that's also heating up a little bit for the summer, 76-degree weather, 65% humidity. And Manoah at the price tag, Gundacker, I feel like not a bad play. Pitch count's been there for him, strikeouts have been there for him, and now he's cheap enough. He's not as loftily priced as he was after he had 1 or 2 good starts earlier this year. But a 7% home run rate so far seems like a risk going against Baltimore, who's certainly not good against right-hand pitching, definitely not as good as they are against lefties. It's only a 150 ISO, but they are a team that has enough pop here that they're going to give Manoah some strikeouts, but it does seem like there's a chance to also give up some power.
Yeah, and this is a back-to-back start for Manoah against the Orioles, and that's something I usually don't love. And he didn't last long in that last start, 3.1 innings, even though he did get to 69 pitches. But because of the shallow pool of pitching today, I do think I'm going to lean on that 27% K rate so far a little bit. And I will probably have more than the field on Manoah here. 8,100. I'm probably just hoping I can knock on the door of a 20, grab a win, and get out of there. But yeah, there's plenty to be concerned about. Young gun. should be really, really good once he does get all the rookie jitters out of his system. So I'm gonna bet on talent going forward, and the Orioles being almost 20 below league average in WRC plus against righty. So it's gonna be there for me, but I'm definitely conceding that there's plenty to be worried about. But I do think muscling his way to 20 isn't out of the question for me. It's still in the mid 70s here, so it is getting warmer in Buffalo. But I think on the grand scope of the slate, this would be one of the lower end in temperature games, but it's still going to be a hitter friendly park. No Matt Harvey, if you were getting to that.
Yeah, let's talk about the Matt Harvey side of the equation, because Matt Harvey, certainly a guy that does have a tough time pitching in Camden Yards, which is going to play to his worst capabilities here. Guys giving up a 241 ISO since 2019 overall. But Harvey going into another park shift that honestly might be a downgrade, at the very least a lateral move. And Matt Harvey probably not a play. Toronto hitters, though, very much a play. I love a 12% chance of being a top stack today, and actually flat ownership relative to that. And on DraftKings, looks like a lot of that ownership will be going to George Springer, who's priced under 4K yet again, despite crazy splits against righties since 2019, a 312 ISO for him against right-handed pitchers. Toronto, the 6.5 implied runs. Gundacker, we mentioned no Matt Harvey, so we are on the same page there. But the Toronto bats, I feel like as long as this ownership doesn't get crazy, definitely seems like a spot that you're going to want to get to the Blue Jays again today.
Yeah, and because there's no lock at upper echelon pitching, salary is not going to be a giant concern. So we can even justify some of these 6K price points on the Blue Jays. So yeah, Blue Jays is going to be one of my more sought after teams from where I'm sitting now. But like you said, if ownership gets a little too egregious on a 13 gamer, then maybe mathematically I fall back. But the last two nights have been pretty rewarding for chalk donkeys, right?
Yeah, that is true. And yesterday we talked about the Blue Jays early in the morning. They didn't look like they were going to be chalky, got there by the time the slate locked in the ownership projection. So definitely something to keep an eye on. And right now the Blue Jays look flat, but throughout the course of the day, maybe more people pick up on that team total and are willing to pay the price tag, and that ownership could come up. So something to keep track on with our Awesemo ownership data throughout the day. Next game up, we got the Yankees getting 5.1 implied runs against Martin Perez. Perez, another pitcher that has had some decent fantasy days recently. I think there was one slate where he was really the only option of note on a short slate. Today, though, going against the Yankees, they are striking out at a 23.8% clip. I've had shockingly low power against lefties on the year with a 166 ISO. The lineup I've projected today would have a 204 ISO against lefties, so maybe due for some positive regression. But Perez, probably not a guy you're willing to play. And the Yankees on the other side, it does seem like the weather here in Boston going to be pretty solid as well. 76 degrees, 75% humidity. Yankee stack, it feels like can get to Perez, who's given up not a lot in the way of home runs. I guess it's the one thing you can say to it's a positive for him. Only 3% home run rate since 2019, 2.7% this year. And I don't mind the Yankees, Gundacker, but it seems like they're a little bit overowned. And if that ownership continues to come up, I feel like the Yankees, not that they're a trap, but Perez is competent enough that I don't know that I'm necessarily trying to attack him if the field's going crazy.
Yeah, Martin Perez, his ground ball rate maybe not as high as it used to be, but he can still limit the power, and that's really where the Yankees are going to benefit you. They're not going to steal bases. They're not really going to hit for average. You're playing them for homers. So if you're going to full stack the Yankees, you're probably banking on 3-4 homers out of your stack. So there's definitely some pushback here if the ownership gets too high. And like you said, they're not as good against lefties as you would think. Like this lineup today could be all righties, and they really might not. They might not be who you think they are. If you guys see, if your eyes light up against Martin Perez. With that said, there's obviously a range of outcomes, probably above average that they do deliver. Luke Voit back in that lineup has been a much needed breath of fresh air, and Gary Sanchez is looking really, really solid lately. So maybe I'm a little biased. I will have some Yankees exposure, but that's kind of par for the course. But I can make a lot of pushback and arguments against the Yankees, especially if their ownership gets a little bit too high based on their numbers on the season, and that the Red Sox bullpen as well is, if we're pushing back on the Yankees because of Martin Perez perhaps not giving up a ton of power, the Red Sox bullpen has actually been above average in home runs allowed as well. So maybe not a whole lot of homers to have here, especially for righties. You got to jump the green monster unless you're going oppo.
Yeah, and then a lot of fly balls as well in the year, 33% fly ball rate from the Boston bullpen. So maybe some room here for the Yankees to get something done. But I think this is one you're probably going to want to watch the ownership on, because it wouldn't be shocking if a chalky Yankee stack just disappoints, as they have many times as chalk. On the other side, we have Domingo Germán going against Boston, 4.9 implied runs going against him. And Germán on the year down to a 22% K rate from a 24.5% K rate since 2019. He's facing a Boston team that strikes out at a 24.8% clip against right-hand pitching on the year. And Germán, I don't have the most confidence in. I do feel like the swinging strike rate and chase rate for him, 13%, 38% chase rate is the mark. And both of those are either in line or improved on where he's been historically. Feels like he should be able to claw back some strikeouts, but at a price tag just shy of 9K on DraftKings, I don't feel the most confidence in Germán. I think you can take some stabs at him, but it's not like yesterday where Joe Ross is a guy that I mentioned I was willing to go to at a stupid price tag. Like on this slate, I don't think you necessarily need to go to a 9K Domingo Germán, just because there are other options that are going to be in that range that are going to be better. But I don't have the most confidence in him, but I do think he's going to at least present some opposition for Boston. So to me, Gundacker, I feel like the Red Sox, not a terribly high priority, and Germán certainly not one either.
Yeah, kind of a wash when you think about it. Germán certainly unremarkable when it comes to what I think his ceiling is in this spot, especially that DK price at 9K. Maybe there's a chip in a chair 6.5 on FanDuel, but on DK, I don't really see myself landing there at all. If I did, it wouldn't be much, but probably not at all. And his secondary pitch, his go-to pitch behind the fastball is the curveball, and all but one Red Sox has a plus rating against the curveball. So I don't really see myself challenging this lineup with Germán. And from a real life aspect, this is a pretty important game. Red Sox could actually go to third place if they lose this game. They want to probably stay in second. So I think it's going to be a high energy game from both teams that are in the hunt.
Next game up, we got Houston getting 5.8 implied runs going against Willie Peralta. And Houston, once again, not looking like chalk today, but this is one that wouldn't shock me if it did come up throughout the day. Only 5% aggregate ownership expected right now on DraftKings compared to an 11% chance to be a top stack. But Peralta has not been very good over the last couple seasons since 2019, a 5.8 xFIP, only a 13% K rate and a 287 batting average allowed. This year, he's only faced 29 batters, but a 6.1 xFIP, and also given up a 13% barrel, 16-degree launch angle. And with the weather, too, in Detroit today, 73-degree weather, but 90% humidity. Does feel like as long as this game goes off, watch out for the rain in this one, I guess, potentially. But this one goes off. Houston somehow being underowned after having a week of being chalk. And I think this matchup on paper, I don't know what to say it's the best one. I think the Dean Kramer matchup or some of these other ones they've had this week might be right there. But I do feel like, I don't know. Houston, to me, I'm shocked they're not much higher owned. Gundacker going against Peralta, who seems like he doesn't have anything of note to point to that could be any sort of opposition.
Yeah, I think if it might just be a weather thing right now, that maybe that's factored in there. So if you guys are working on the slate, taking notes, asterisk, check back for the weather. We'll just play the analytical part. If this game plays, the Astros should absolutely be a sought after stat. They've been on fire, and they have just been served up bad pitchers after bad pitchers. So there should be another great spot for him today. And we know that this Tigers bullpen will give them 9 innings of really, really positive matchup. So yeah, I'd be right there on the Astros. And if they stay at this ownership, I'd probably be 5 times the field at this rate.
Yeah, it does seem like the price tags, again, not too crazy. Certainly some of these guys will say Altuve at 6K. You also have Jordan Alvarez at 6K on DraftKings, and you have Correa over 5K, Gurriel over 5K. You probably have to pay up here, but this is a slate where you can do that. And it definitely looks like these guys overall, we'll talk about it more in the deeper dive live before lock. The ownership could move around. This game could also be postponed. I think it is the one game that we have looking red on some of the weather sites out there covering MLB, but definitely one that if it goes off, spot here against Peralta, that should be pretty good. And as Gundacker mentions, a pretty bad bullpen behind him as well. Framber Valdez going on the other side. He is priced like he is a superstar pitcher, and he is not getting superstar pitcher results so far this year. 22% K rate. Does have a 0.99 whip. That is actually a very good mark. Not walking guys a lot at a 7% rate, and 95 pitches per appearance. Those are all positives, as well as the fact that he's facing Detroit. Strikes out at a 29% rate on the year, actually 29.4%. Only a 128 ISO against left-hand pitching as well. So it really seems like the matchup is why you're getting priced up here for Valdez. And Gundacker, I feel like in this spot, I haven't wanted to take stabs at these kind of situations. And again, Joe Ross, I feel like yesterday was kind of the same one. League average strikeout guy in a really good spot. I don't mind taking the shot at Valdez here. I think Carlos Rodon's a more appealing option, but Valdez at 18% expected ownership. He has a 17% chance to be a top pitcher. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be with the field here.
No, I think as long as, like we said, weather permitting,
Right.
Valdez is probably going to be one of my top 3 owned pitchers. The the metrics maybe don't blow you away, but against everyone else on the slate, they're pretty doggone good. And like you said, matchup here is kind of a implied boost. Tigers are just really, really bad, and there's a lot of high strikeout potential in this lineup. And we've already seen Valdez drop a couple 30 bombs against good teams like the Red Sox. So, yeah, I'd be right there on Valdez, but it's highly contingent on the weather.
Yeah, so keep an eye on the weather in this one, and Detroit bats are not going to look the most appealing anyway. But yeah, this spot can be a game that really does have some things to offer, but the weather in this one really the only one that looks extremely bad right now, or potentially extremely bad. Next game up, we got the Angels getting 3.7 implied runs going against Andrew Kittredge as the opener, it looks like, and then we'll see basically a bullpen day behind him. I'm not sure, Gundacker, if you saw who would be the long reliever, because I guess that could matter. People did target Ryan Yarbrough coming behind Kittredge last time out, but you know anything about who the Rays are going for the long reliever?
I got Josh Fleming. Looks like.
Okay. Does that do anything for you?
1 second. Josh Fleming. He gives up a lot of power to lefties so far, so I guess that would be a plus for Ohtani.
Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting way to look at it. So maybe Ohtani gets a little bit of a boost. I still like to avoid Tampa Bay bullpen days. They're only giving up a 1.1 whip. And I know the recent results might say that they're a good situation to go to, but roof closed again in Tampa Bay, as is always going to be the case. Park factor's not benefiting the hitters. So a pretty big park shift downgrade as well for the Angels compared to Angel Stadium. That's one of the more underappreciated power parks. To me, I don't find a lot of interest in the Angels stack. Only a 2.7% chance to be a top stack, but they'll be mostly unknown, Gundacker. So do you see any interest at all going to the Angels with only 3.7 implied runs in their favor?
Nah, I mean, on big slates, I usually don't see myself getting too invested in Tropicana, but I would have at least one-off exposure to the obvious, like Ohtani's, Jared Wallace, guys like that. But I probably don't get too invested in the stack itself.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't see a lot of reason to be there. Tampa Bay on the other side going against Griffin Canning. Maybe a little more logic given that Canning has struggled giving up power. 204 ISO since 2019. Does have a 24.4% K rate. But Griffin Canning, one of those guys, I feel like the field always wants to play more than I do. Not sure that's going to be the case. Pretty bad projection from him, from Awesemo today for him. Only under 14 fantasy points or 14 DK points at an 8K price tag. Canning, I don't see a lot of interest in, though I guess he could find some strikeouts going against Tampa Bay. Strikes out at a 26.3% clip against right-hand pitching on the year. But the Rays bats, also unowned. I feel like this is a spot, Gundacker, where if I got in an optimizer, I wouldn't run away from it. But really, I don't love Tampa Bay's bats, though they do have 4.8 implied runs. And Canning, too, just a guy that 8K. Like, if he's at 7K, I might take a stab. 8K, I don't think you need to be there a bunch.
Yeah, if the Rays lineup comes out with a little less lefties than currently projected, might be a little bit more intrigued with Canning. We mentioned there's going to be some uncomfortable guys in our pool for running 100, 150, and Canning at least has that potential strikeout rate in him, and maybe he gets bailed out by this pitcher's park to put in a serviceable game. But on a short, like if I was running 20 lineups, I don't think Canning makes the cut. But it's just one of those range of outcomes if I had to fill 100, 150.
Yeah, so definitely a team that, going to grade out maybe mediocrely in some stacks. So Tampa Bay stack could definitely come up in an optimizer, but yeah, ones that probably not going to be priorities, and same thing for Griffin Canning. Next game, we got Atlanta getting 5.1 implied runs, and here's a stack that's going to be pretty well owned, going against Vladimir Gutierrez, and Gutierrez recently has had some usable days, a 92 pitch count for him so far on the year. 90-degree launch angle he's given up, though, can be problematic given that he is playing at Cincinnati. 80-degree weather, 70% humidity today, and Gutierrez, to me, a guy that I guess I wouldn't hate getting a little bit of just because of the cheap price tag, though it'd be nice if he were a little cheaper given the fact he's going against Atlanta. And Atlanta, too, can be a weaker lineup if they have Acuna out one more time after he's missed the last 2 games. But on the year, Gundacker, 188 ISO for them against right-hand pitching, 25% K rate. So I think you can make the case slightly for both sides, but Gutierrez only a 19% strikeout rate. Does seem like the Braves can get something going here. So are you feeling a Braves stack that currently looks like they have twice the ownership expected compared to their probability of being a top stack?
Yeah, Acuna is definitely the wild card here. This lineup becomes a lot less fun to stack without Acuna's power and base running potential out there. So I think that would be my contingency plan. If Acuna's in, I'm in it because I do love Great American Ballpark for a DFS standpoint, and Gutierrez is definitely not that menacing, and this bullpen has been horrendous. The Reds bullpen, that is. So definitely a plus matchup But the Braves, without Acuna, feel like right now the Angels without like Ohtani or Trout. It's just you're not playing a lot of names that make you feel confident. And at past Freeman and Albie, it's like it's really cherry picking who's who of who's that. So if Acuna's in, I could sign up for the Braves, but it does seem like their ownership versus some of these other teams we've already talked about is less lucrative than I'd like it to be.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, I don't mind taking stabs on these guys. If you have Acuna in as sort of the base point of where we're going here, and Freeman still being there definitely is one cosign, but you have a bunch of guys around a 185, 175 ISO range. Like those are perfectly fine numbers. But when you compare that to Acuna being at 270, Freeman being at 286 against right-hand pitching, like those are pretty big drop-offs. So Atlanta, if they're going to be this chalky and if somehow Acuna isn't in the lineup, I think they might be a team to move away from. But keep an eye on that one because that definitely could be moved around a little bit. I think we saw that yesterday, the Braves ownership dropping some because of Acuna not being in the mix. So something to keep in mind. Drew Smiley going on the other side against Cincinnati. And Cincinnati was kind of a disappointment yesterday, but I would be willing to go back there again today. Smiley giving up a 16-degree launch angle, 11% barrel ball rate in this park. And the Reds also getting 5.4 implied runs going against them. Price tags here are going to be ugly once again. Jesse Winker is the one guy who always gets priced at a really high level. And against righties, you don't mind taking that price tag. Against lefties, though, only a .090 ISO since 2019 going against left-handed pitchers. Jonathan India also not a good ISO guy so far against left-handed pitchers as well. I like the middle of the order, though. Castellanos, Stevenson, Suarez, Aristides Aquino, all these guys have hit lefties extremely well over a course of time that I'm willing to take that shot. Going against Smiley, who's pretty much had, I can't say he's had nothing, but definitely not the guy we saw during the pandemic season last year. How are you feeling about the Reds? And if you have an interest in Drew Smiley as well, feel free to give him a cosign.
No, it's more so Reds for me. I definitely wish this lineup was constructed a little bit differently. I would want to maximize Aquino at bats here against Smiley. And what I was watching the game the other night on a night where Aquino homered, they still subbed him out for a platoon matchup. So Aquino may not give you a full 9 innings if they feel like they need his bat in a closer game. But this middle of the lineup looks really nice. Castellanos, Stevenson, Suarez, Aquino. That's probably my favorite 4 matchup specific. And then the Braves bullpen also. Then they're not as bad as the Reds or the Tigers, but they're less than average. So you put decent hitters against a below average bullpen in a top hitters park, especially a top home run park. Good things can happen. So on a big slate, I'll definitely be there on the Reds. I do personally wish the lineup was constructed a little bit different.
All right, let's get to the next game. Before we do that, though, make sure you guys are checking out all the podcast feeds that we have at awesemo.com/podcast. All the YouTube shows like this one, not the deeper dives, not the live before locks, because there isn't a big shelf life, but the strategy shows for MMA, for MLB, for PGA, for NBA, those are all available on the Awesemo Podcast Network. So go over to awesemo.com/podcast. It's also going to be the best way that you can get to win a free week of Awesemo Plus if you leave 5 stars and a review there with your Twitter username or your email address. You'll be entered to win that one, and they give those away every Friday. So go check this out. An underappreciated way to get those free weeks for all the people out there who maybe don't want to invest their own money so far. So go awesemo.com/podcast, subscribe to the podcast, and leave them 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts for your chance to win a free week of Awesemo Plus. Next game up, and Gundacker, we're making good time here. I'm feeling good about our chances.
Yeah, you're cruising.
The people out there don't know that my goal is always when we have these big shows to get it done in 1 hour flat, because as I mentioned yesterday, it's like a dad driving across the country. You're just trying to make the best possible time. And it's the one competition you have for yourself. And we're almost halfway through at the halfway point, feeling good with Washington getting 3.3 implied runs against Pablo Lopez. Lopez, 25% K rate on the year, 1.07 whip, 3.5 xWhip. He's been really good. The price tag kind of jarring to see, but it does make sense given his results on the year. The issue is that he's going against Washington, who strikes out at a 22.8% clip. Certainly has some dangerous bats, though. That bottom of the order every single time just looks pretty bad with Yan Gomes, Starlin Castro, Josh Harrison, Victor Robles. All these guys having really not great numbers compared to the top of the order, where Schwarber's been absolutely destroying recently. But overall, the sample size of 2019 is really strong. 307 ISO for him against right-handed pitching since 2019. And Trey Turner, Juan Soto, premium price tags here. Gundacker, you want to get any Lopez, or I guess are you willing to get Nationals bats given that nobody's playing them and they only have a 1.5% chance of being a top stack today?
I think I will play some Lopez. I'm not usually a big isolated splits guy, but Lopez has been pretty strong at home especially when the roof is closed. So if I can get a 1 and 4 K rate, 25% right now, keeps the ball in the park on a slate with a shallow pitching pool, I think Lopez does make the cut for me. I'm getting sick of being on the outside looking in on Kyle Schwarber, but at this point I'm slot machining it, man. He's got to not homer one of these days. So maybe today I step back and I believe in Lopez to suppress him.
Yeah, I agree. Like Lopez, to me, I think is going to do a good enough job today. I always am intrigued by the Washington Bats when they're unowned, but it is a tough park. I guess the roof is one thing to watch out for here. Schmancy Schmabs has the roof currently as being open, 81-degree weather, 83% humidity. So if that is the case, that would look better. But that's one we'll know closer to lock. And they have been closing the roof more than they said they would earlier in the year. So if somehow it ends up open, downgrade Lopez, upgrade the Bats. But the Vegas totals seem to indicate a closed roof day right now. John Lester going on the other side. He's at a 16% K rate, giving up a 278 batting average on the year, going against Miami, who does stink enough that maybe John Lester will find himself one useful day. Miami striking out at a 28% rate, 28.3% actually against left-hand pitching on the year. And John Lester, not somebody I'm normally going to go, hey, you could play this guy, but an 85 pitch count, a guy who is going to get a really good strikeout matchup. I don't hate the idea of taking a few stabs at John Lester today, Gundacker, and I feel like a 5% chance of being a top pitcher, according to Top Pitchers, so 11.5% chance of being a top value. That's enough for me to get to 5 to 10%, I feel like, and certainly not the sexiest 5 to 10% you'll get, but are you feeling any John Lester, or are you trying to take Miami Bats going against him?
It's kind of one of those weird spots where like I don't want Lester, but I'm not like running to play Marlins Bats. So like I can understand if you're on either side. I'm probably on the throw my hands up and hope 13 game slate. The right answer somewhere else, but I could understand why you're there. Also, I could also understand like why you get to like a Starling Marte, Jesus Aguilar, Duvall. Like they have a couple guys that in their DNA can hit lefties for some power, but the park could suppress some of that power, and it could just be medium results. So I might just be hoping for the best by not having either side.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable way to look at it. It does seem this is something that our pal Greg Ehrenberg talks about a lot. But going to Lester, it's not a leverage bat situation. But you look at the Miami field ownership, and right now they look overowned across the board. 5.4% ownership expected here, according to the top stack, still compared to 2% chance of being a top stack. So Miami currently looks overowned with whatever people are going to attack John Lester. But the park factors actually should help Lester out a little bit more. Next game, we got Kansas City getting 3.8 implied runs going against Dane Dunning. Dane Dunning, a 25% K rate on the year, 75 pitches per appearance, and actually shockingly low 3.4 xFIP, given that he's got a 294 batting average allowed against him and an unlucky 380 BABIP for him. And it does seem like Dunning maybe could benefit. I guess Texas's roof expected to be open today, so 95-degree weather would certainly make that tougher on him. But a 6-degree launch angle, 7% barrel ball rate. Dunning's been okay, and I think he's another guy to me that, especially if the roof ends up closed somehow, I could see getting to a little bit of Dane Dunning because of the price tag. Same thing as John Lester. Though Dunning projected for 15% ownership, just shy of 16% actually. So that is one potentially mitigating factor here. But Gundacker, if the roof somehow ends up closed, and again, this right now it does look like it'll be open, is Dunning a guy you'd be willing to get to with the field expected to be there over 15% of the time on DK?
Yeah, roof would actually be a pretty pivotal part of that decision-making process because it's pretty doggone hot out here in Texas. And Dunning, though, like even if the roof was open, I don't know if I'm all the way out. He's kind of cheap enough to justify. Like if you're gonna play John Lester, you could probably justify Dane Dunning here. The Sierra and expected ERA better than the ERA, so some positive regression to come in his way. You like that whip to be a little bit lower, but yeah, I could get some Dunning, but much more so if the roof is if there's a lid on the dome for sure.
And if the roof is open, I do think you could start to make a case for the Kansas City Bats. It does seem to me the implied totals here feel like the roof should be close. 3.8 implied runs for Kansas City, 4.2 for Texas. But Kansas City Bats, if the roof ends up open and they are going to be completely unknown, they don't currently have a high probability of being a top stack, only 2.2% chance of being a top stack, along with 1.1% aggregate ownership. But the Royals, a team that I never really mind getting to, and Sal Perez, I think one of the bats that always jumps out. Jorge Soler has maybe not been quite as good recently, but still has historically had enough power to get there. Any Royals bats jumping out for you if we are to say the roof might be open?
Dunning's weakness has been power to righty. So Salvador Perez, if he gets back in the lineup, he was injured the last game and a half against the Yankees. Maybe a day of rest is good for him. And then Whit Merrifield, I dig him. And then Ryan O'Hearn came back from the minors due to I think it was part of the Mondesi injury. I'm not sure. And then they stuck him right in that cleanup spot, and he raked out there in that Yankee series. So maybe he stays hot here against the maybe not so much Dunning, but this bullpen.
Yeah, Dane Dunning, too, worth pointing out on PrizePicks, over 4.5 strikeouts is the prop on there, which I actually would be intrigued by if we do get that roof closed. So that's one to keep in mind there. And of course, if you are playing on PrizePicks, A, you should be simplifying daily fantasy by doing that. And then B, also use that promo code Awesemo to get yourself a $100 deposit match when you are depositing over there. That's the biggest deposit match you'll find in the industry. So make sure you're playing over at PrizePicks. Mike Minor going on the other side for Kansas City. A reasonable price tag for him. Pitch count's been around 97, so it's also a positive one. Another guy, though, where you really want to see the roof close for him, given that he's given up a 17-degree launch angle, 10% barrel ball rate. That would play a lot worse if the roof is open and it's 95-degree weather with some humidity going in Texas. So that's something to keep in mind, especially with Minor right now projected for 22% ownership overall. And the ownership tag to me seems right. If the roof is closed, like I think that's a pretty good mark for Mike Minor. It's guys under 9K and does have pretty good splits, 26% K rate, 1.2 whip, not walking guys too much. Gundacker, are you feeling Mike Minor here if we're to assume the roof is going to be closed?
Yeah, I'd have some. I probably don't get more than like 15%. That might be a little high, but I'd put the cap right now pre-flop if the roof is shut.
Yeah, and Minor's got a 6.5 strikeout line here on PrizePicks, so that is a pretty good mark for him. Definitely one. I don't know that I want to take the over on that one quite as much, though he is facing a Texas team that strikes out at a 24% clip and only has a 132 ISO against left-hand pitching. But Minor, to me, if the roof is closed, and that is the key part here, if the roof somehow ends up open and the field's ownership is going to be around there, I'm probably going to go the other way and take some Texas bats as leverage. But we'll talk about that more. Again, deeper dive on Live Before Lock coming up 5 p.m. Eastern today, so tune in there, and we'll be back to discuss these more and know a little bit more about the stadiums themselves. Texas going on the other side against Mike Minor, and I guess we could talk about this one. We'll talk about the hitters through the prism of if the roof is going to be open for the spot. And I do think, again, Texas, if the roof is open, I like the hitters here. I'm willing to go there. Andy Ibanez has hit lefties pretty well so far in a very limited sample size overall, though probably not a guy that I think we're expecting the most out of. But Adolis Garcia had pretty big home run splits so far, 220 ISO for him against lefties. Joey Gallo hits fellow lefties pretty well for a period of time. The rest of the lineup, though, really does fall off the cliff, where Culberson's really the only guy I feel like has any sort of merit to go to. But which Rangers bats would jump out to you, Gundacker, if we were to assume that the roof is going to be open and somehow Mike Minor has ownership?
Yeah, it'd probably be Garcia at the top there. If Culberson, you're kind of one of those lineup spots, like against lefties, his numbers are fine. He'd be bare bones man on FanDuel, but in the 9 hole, he might get but one, maybe 2 at bats against Minor, and that's a little bit much to kind of put down there. So I wish it was a little bit higher in the projected lineup, and then he might get platooned out. But Adolis Garcia would probably be number 1 for me.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think Adolis Garcia, not a terrible price tag. And Culberson, it'd be nice if he moved up the order. Right now, he's projected to be in the 9 hole. It does feel like, given his splits, he should be up a little bit higher. Like, I don't know why you'd have Eli White, who hasn't ever done anything against the lefty and has a negative 14 WRC plus. I'm in the 2 hole against the lefty, but something to keep in mind here. And again, watch the lineups here, and we'll talk about it later on in the course of the day. Next game, we got Cleveland getting 4.5 implied runs against Daniel Colombe, or Danny Colombe, based upon what site you're looking at out there. And Colombe, I would guess, basically going to be a glorified opener. I don't know if you know any more about him, Gundacker, but he hasn't pitched in the majors this year, has faced 13 batters last year, it looks like. So I don't know what to make of him, and honestly didn't dig any deeper because he feels like a guy that shouldn't be relevant on the slate.
Yeah, he's only had appearances up to 2 innings in the minors this year. So opener is probably the best way to kind of play this one. And because of that, you just don't play him. What I will say, and I guess if we want to look at the splits or whatever in the minors, he has been all right, holding both sides of the plate at a decent average. 1 bomb in 13 innings to righties. His ground out to air out ratio 1.4 against lefties, 0.91 against righties. So just kind of, you might get 1 round of at bats against them, so you don't overthink it. If you're going to play Indians, you're just banking on talent versus a bullpen.
Yeah, I would agree. It's not a great bullpen for Minnesota. 1.4 whip for them on the year, 3.7% on run rate being given up. And the weather here in Minnesota also starting to heat up, 83 degrees. Not the most humidity, but still the temperature being that hot certainly can help out. And Cleveland bats, I think, going against a mediocre bullpen and whatever Colombe is going to be doing, I think seems like a reasonable play. Cleveland, though, the issue is once you get past Jose Ramirez, like, what are you really going to? Bobby Bradley's been okay for power against righties more so. And he actually has had power against lefties too with a 230 .38 ISO overall, but only a 143 batting average so far in the majors against lefties. So I don't have a ton of confidence there, Gundacker, but it does look like they're under the top stacks tool. So which Indians would you want to go to if you were to stack them up?
So behind Colombe, Griffin Jax is a rookie. They're projected long men. And so far, he has allowed a ton of hard contact to both sides of play. Hasn't allowed a bomb to lefties yet, but I think that's more luck than anything. A 54% hard contact rate, a 36% line drive rate. Like there's reason to believe that he can get got. And he's definitely been got by righties so far as well. So might be a sneaky spot for power righties, but there's really no one that kind of I guess Harold Ramirez. There's not really a righty that you would kind of fit that bill with. So I'd probably just bank on the talent here. You mentioned Jose Ramirez, maybe Eddie Rosario gets into some revenge action. And those are probably the two names that I feel the best about. Cesar Hernandez, known power hitter this year, might also fit the bill here against Jax, but it's this Indians team. It's just not fun.
And it's worth pointing out in the new MLB prop betting tool that we have on the site, which actually I'll drop a link in the chat because people may not be aware of this one yet because it only came out a few days ago. But it is using the same data that we use for the NBA win percentage and ROI percentage tools. It's going to be in there. And it's worth pointing out that Awesemo currently has Jose Ramirez to not hit a home run as an 83% probability. So maybe not a high expectation of there to be production going against Minnesota in this current situation. Because if you look at this lineup, like Ramirez is really the one I think you can point to and go like, yeah, that guy could probably hit a home run. Everybody else here looks pretty bad. So maybe not a lot of reason to have hope though. 4.5 implied runs for Cleveland. Maybe there is a little more there, a little more meat on the bone than the home run odds will give you. Cal Quantrill going on the other side, a 19% K rate for him going against Minnesota. And Quantrill fits the profile of guys who have had success. And I guess Quantrill will also be basically an opener. So it'll be mostly a bullpen day, but good bullpen behind Quantrill, and Quantrill himself, only a 9-degree launch angle, 6% barrel ball rate. And these are the guys, Gundacker, that I feel like Minnesota always ends up a little bit overowned. And they end up overowned against guys that just don't give up that launch angle. And if Minnesota doesn't get it laid up where they need it to be, like they are a crazy power team, but they're a crazy power team when it's set up for them in the way they want it to be. We see them fail time and time again against guys like Quantrill who keep that ball down. So I don't like the Minnesota stack that much. And clearly Quantrill not going to play either as a glorified opener.
Yeah, Quantrill actually got to 5 innings in his last start, 77 pitches. So maybe you put 10, 15 pitches on top of that and they try to get a little bit more out of them. With that said, like there's not much to like, I don't know, not a whole lot to expect out of them in terms of fantasy upside, but it's just 200, maybe a chip in a chair. But the fact that he could play over half the game with this low hard contact rate and elevated ground ball rate, at least to righties, and his power suppression against lefties has been notable since the beginning of last year. He could definitely play spoiler, and I'm with you that like the Twins. You look back at that Orioles series, you know, just against average to below average pitchers that they should get, they really haven't delivered. 2 steps forward, 3 steps backwards. Byron Buxton comes back and then gets hurt again, so they just can't stay right. And if the Twins garner too much ownership, like you said, I'll probably look the other way and hope it doesn't crush me.
Yeah, it's in a spot here where Trevor Warnock looks like he'll have a good amount of ownership. Luis Arias going to have a good amount of ownership. Neither guy, especially Arias. Arias' ownership always kind of baffles me because he's always going to be decently priced, it looks like, in the leadoff spot, but he just doesn't have power. He gets on base really well, but doesn't do a whole lot else. And certainly a guy that helps out a team from a team perspective where he's not striking out. He's driving up the pitcher at bat and the pitcher pitch count rather in his at bats. So I just don't think these guys are DFS plays that ever deserve to be owned like they are. And if Larnach and Arias are going to be that highly owned, and even if you like the Twins, like get less of those guys, get more of Donaldson, get more of Cruz, get more of Kepler. And Kepler is actually pretty cheap for a guy who's got power too. So something to keep in mind, even for the people who do believe in the Twins more than Gundacker and I do today. Let's keep going here. And we got Seattle actually in the most important spot of the slate because Carlos Rodon's in it. So first of all, hit that like button, guys. We haven't gotten enough likes yet. And I feel like we should just get more because it's early in the morning here and we're again making phenomenal time. And that's really the main thing we're all looking for here. So help us out, hit that like button. And let's talk about Carlos Rodon, who is going to be the top projected pitcher everywhere you go today on DraftKings. According to our top pitcher, Sully has a 36% chance of being a top pitcher, along with 54% ownership. On FanDuel, a 12% chance to be the top pitcher with 34% 50% ownership. So FanDuel may be a different situation. But let's talk about it through DK first, Gundacker, then we'll talk about FanDuel. Rodon, 54% ownership going against Seattle. 3 implied runs against them. Seattle striking out at a 27% clip on the year. Actually 27.6% clip on the year. 85 WRC plus as well, so they're not generating runs. And Rodon's stuff is one guy who's not been affected so far by the spin rate issues. A 37% K rate on the year, 16% swing and strike rate, 33% chase rate. He is the best pitcher on the slate by a wide margin, and I think the 54% number feels aggressive. He does look overowned according to the top pitchers tool on DraftKings, but he is, to me, is just like the best arm by a wide mile. And also he's also in the best situation. So like, it's to me, Rodon by really above everybody else by a really big gap. How are you approaching him? And I guess, do you have any reservations at all with Carlos Rodon?
No, I mean, matchup is pristine. There's a lot of 30% K. There's only 3 guys in this Mariners lineup that don't have like a 26% or better K rate against lefties. And it still stays above 20% unless you look at Crawford. So the match is pristine. He's at home and his offense gets a lefty. We'll talk about that lefty in a minute. But everything's going for him to have a super solid game. And then as shallow as pitching is, 25 could be a number that gets you to the optimal lineup. But the only pushback I could make is 50% of the field. You can differentiate yourself pretty easily by not having a 50% owned pitcher at the top of your lineup. But I think I might eat that today just because the other options are a little rougher. Maybe if Framber Valdez opens up, if the weather gets cleared, that'll shake up some numbers. But yeah, I think the only argument against Rodon is ownership.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page with you there, where I just simply don't see how Rodon's not, if not the top pitcher, the guy who's going to give you the best combination of floor and ceiling on the slate. And to me, that is basically what a top pitcher is going to be for how I would approach MLB DFS for the most part. And on FanDuel, I guess the question would be, does it look any different for you there? Because I know our boy Steve Buzzard has talked about in some of the office hours recently, just, trusting a pitcher on FanDuel, being willing to go to them, even if the field's going to be there heavily, and then trying to differentiate either in his lineup construction or the stacks he's going to or things like that. It does look like an onerous number on FanDuel, but Rodon's still, the top pitcher by a pretty good margin. And I guess you go to Mike Minor to save a lot of money on FanDuel. I guess that comes to some logic if that roof is closed in Texas today. But I still feel like on FanDuel, even with the ownership being more of a buzzsaw, I think Rodon's still the strongest play on there. So I guess, does the equation change for you on FanDuel where you are only getting that single pitcher and the price tag is a really big discrepancy?
Yeah, I don't think it does. I think at least the bigger the slate, the more likely I am to pay up for a high floor pitcher, because we get homers out of 2K specials every day. They don't necessarily get 30 or on FanDuel 50, 60 fantasy points out of the 6K, 7K pitchers. So I'll pay for the floor here and the 26 teams of options to find me some value bats to give me some homers, some stolen bases, stuff like that. I'd rather be on the safe side. So I'd be on Rodon just as much on FanDuel.
Would you take any Seattle bats as leverage going against Rodon just to hedge? I still feel like there's no ownership going to them, so that is the one logic point you have, but not great park factors. I guess it is humid overall, about 86% humidity, but the weather, 72 degrees, is not the best. And I just don't think Rodon gets blown up, but there's nobody there, so I could sort of see the case intellectually more than I feel it in terms of an actual approach. But would you get any Mariners bats just to hedge?
Maybe like a Mitch Haniger, Tom Murphy, somebody like that, but it's just sprinkling there. If they fall, they fall. It wouldn't really necessarily be a strategic play because, like I said, I don't think the ownership is going to be. I guess hedge against a 50% owned pitcher, but even his bag game is not likely to be getting blown up. So I probably not.
Yeah, only a 2.1% on run rate for him, though he does give up a 17-degree launch angle. And I think Murphy is the one guy that jumps out, 3,300, maybe a catcher play. You don't love the stack that you have with the catcher in some other situation. You put Murphy in, and that's one way to hedge, a little bit. But I think it's more likely you just see one home run given up by Rodon here and probably not much more. You say Kikuchi going on the other side. I would be able to talk myself into playing Kikuchi if it weren't the price tag that he's at and the matchup he's in. But he's been good on the year, 25.3% K rate, only a 1.04 whip, 3.5 xFIP, so everything's looking pretty good. Low launch angle too of 7 degrees, actually 6.6 degrees, so a little bit less than that. But he's going against the White Sox with a 120 WRC plus against left-hand pitching, 180 ISO, 342 on base percentage. And I like Kikuchi enough that I don't know that I want to go crazy with the White Sox on their side, but I think there's a case to be made here with under 2% ownership. And it sucks because I think Kikuchi's a good enough pitcher, Gundacker, but I feel like the White Sox bats are probably the better play out of the two sides.
Yeah, this is probably the first game so far that I'll be kind of walking both sides of the fence here. Kikuchi has been strong enough that I could see a 25 DKP performance out of him. White Sox since the beginning of last year, just one of the best teams against lefties, period. But there's been a couple of guys that sneaked through this year. Jordan Montgomery, I think Robbie Ray, guys like that. And I'm not necessarily putting Kikuchi on their levels, but a 1-4 K rate, 13.5% swinging strike rate. There's at least a range of outcomes that he can get you to nearly 25 DKP, which is kind of my optimal mark on this slate. But at the same time, I'll play both sides of the field here. I think the equity in ownership projections, I have enough breathing room to have both sides. So I'd still get onto that White Sox stack based on their historical numbers against lefties. And believe it or not, the Mariners bullpen has played above average, but this is an above average offense in the White Sox. So I'm just playing both sides if I'm going to cop out.
All right, last few games here. Let's get to Pittsburgh. 3.6 implied runs going against Kwang Hyun Kim. And Kwang Hyun Kim is going to be, actually, where is his price tag? Because the naming thing broke him for me on that. Let's see. Kwang Hyun is going to be, I feel like he can't be that expensive.
7.6.
Let's see where. What was the number? Sorry, I'm for
7.6K on DK.
All right, so that's not that great of a number then. This spot for Kwang Hyun Kim, I've actually advocated for him once or twice this year, and I think it's been passable. Going against Pittsburgh, though, they don't strike out a lot. They also don't have a ton of power. So Kwang Hyun Kim's main utility here would just be surviving the game, being in long enough, and the weather should be tough. 89-degree weather, 70% humidity. So. I like Pittsburgh a lot yesterday, and I think the splits here would make me think Pittsburgh might be an interesting mini stack once again today. 60% chance to be a top value stack with only 5% aggregate ownership. And Brian Hayes is always one that jumps out to me, but it's really the top guys. Brian Hayes, Jacob Stallings would be interesting as well. And Brian Reynolds, I never really mind going against Kwang Hyun Kim, but he's been passable, Gundacker. So I kind of feel like this spot, I don't know. If it's going to be owned, I don't want to be there very much. If it's going to be owned, I would. But do you have any love at all for either the Pirates bats or Kwang Hyun Kim?
Nah, I think this is a wash for me. I think that what does stand out the most about Kim right now is his strikeout rates are obscenely split heavy. Like it's near 30% since the beginning of last year against lefties, but against righties, he stayed at under 17%. Really 17.5 this year, 12% last year. And this Pirates lineup actually comes out way more righty heavy. I got just two lefties in projected lineups. So this lineup already doesn't strike out much. And then you parlay that with the fact where Kim doesn't strike out righties much. I can't really expect much in lieu of fantasy there. And Pirates, I think if they do succeed, it'd be more of a small ball effort. And I just probably don't take that shot on a Friday night. So I probably just hope for mediocre results.
Yeah, I think as a mini stack, this is a team that's definitely going to come up in an optimizer because of the price tags on them. So I don't hate getting there a little bit, but I think if the ownership comes up enough here, it could start to get onerous in a way that could be a little bit ugly in a spot where both sides could probably prevent the production decently enough for their end. Will Crow going on the other side for Pittsburgh, and he's been pitching about 78 pitches per plate appearance or per start so far this year. And the numbers for him have not been very good either. 273 batting average, 5% home run rate, 21% K rate. So probably not a guy you're trying to play very much of going against a St. Louis team that also doesn't strike out a bunch. 22.8% rate on the year. St. Louis, though, not hitting righties very well, only a 147 ISO, 293 on base percentage. And I think they can get to Will Crow in a day where the weather should help them out a little bit. So I think the Cardinals bats look okay. The ownership going to Dylan Carlson and Tyler O'Neill. It looks like the rest of the lineup will be unknown. But I don't know, like Will Crow, I guess he's not good, but he's not bad enough that it's going to jump out meaningfully. He's not a Matt Harvey level kind of guy that I think the Cardinals are more appealing, Gundacker. But do you actually like the Cardinals, or do you like Will Crow at all?
I'd be more inept to take the Cardinals versus or more in it to take the Cardinals than Crow. Crow's whip scares me, 1.57. If you're going to allow a lot of traffic, it creates the potential big inning to happen. And the Cardinals don't hit for a lot of power, but there's enough power sprinkled in that, a 3-run blast here and there could start making some turns. So I'd be more with the Cardinal. I don't think I get the Crow. I'm not in love with the Cardinal stack, but I can write the case here based on Crow's metrics.
Yeah, Crow not missing bats at all, where you're going to expect him to get much results against a team that doesn't strike out. Only a 8% swing strike rate, 27% chase rate. And yeah, I'm with you. I think the Cardinals more appealing, but probably not incredibly appealing. The weather is really the main thing here, and the Cardinals results themselves have just not been that good against right-hand pitching on the year. Last 3 games, we got Oakland getting 3.9 implied runs going against Johnny Cueto. Johnny Cueto, 8,200 feels like a play that you're probably not going to get to very much. The field will be there about 5% of the time, so that seems like more than enough. Oakland, though, I feel like Cueto's been good enough at run prevention, only a 7% barrel ball rate, 3.2% on run rate allowed. At the park in San Francisco has been playing a little bit better, and it will be 90% humidity there, though a cold day at 56-degree weather. So I don't know. That's probably not the most helpful thing overall. But Oakland bats, I feel like you could talk me into them in some situations when they are unowned. I feel like the stack here going against Cueto would be more appealing to me for Oakland, Gundacker. But do you have any interest in the A's? It is a really low implied total, 3.9 implied runs going against Cueto, and Cueto's been passable, if not, actually good at pitching in any way.
Yeah, the total really, really spooks me. And I think a lot to do with the park and the temperature. So I'd probably be really, really light on this game, but I could see myself having a little bit of everything. Maybe not so much Cueto, but like I wouldn't fault someone from getting there. Manaea is a little intriguing. 12% swinging strike rate, almost a 1 in 4 K rate on the season. Gets a plus park. I will say Giants have been one of my Cinderella stacks against lefties. They got some fun names. I wish Evan Longoria was healthy, but other than that, you got the Wilmer Flores, Posies, Ruffs, Slaters, guys like that every now and then we'll get through against the lefties, but I think this weather will play enough of a role to kind of suppress some would-be upside. So I could see myself getting, maybe 5-6% of Giants if I thought I could maybe double the field at that ownership. And then Manaea at 9.8, I don't think that's going to get a whole lot of run, but there's at least a plus opportunity, I think, for him to be a top 4 pitcher. What do we got him at 14%? So I'd probably match that then at 14%. I think that's safe.
Yeah, Manaea, I would agree. Like, he's the pivot to both Valdez and also to Carlos Rodon. Those guys are going to be more appealing plays. Valdez, obviously, weather contingent and all that. But Manaea is a tournament option that's going to be a little bit overpriced, and I think could get results. The Giants only striking out at 23.4% rate, but Manaea has been solid, 25% strikeout rate. As Gundacker mentioned, a 12.1% swing strike rate. So I'm with you. I think you could take some stabs on both directions here, though neither is going to be a priority for what you're doing overall in the slate. The last 2 games here, we got the Cubs getting 3.9 implied runs against Tony Gonsolin. Gonsolin on the year walking guys at an insane 18% rate, but historically has at a 1.01 whip. This year, though, 5.5 xFIP. Strikeouts have been there, 25% rate. And Gonsolin, I don't know why he's been priced where he is, given the low pitch count so far and just the fact that he really hasn't been a blowaway strikeout guy. But strikeouts have been good enough that I would put him a tier below Manaea as sort of an expensive pivot play. But there's a pathway for him to be useful, getting a 26% strikeout rate for the Cubs on the year against right-hand pitching. Are you willing to play any Gonsolin? Because no ownership at all in a guy who's getting strikeouts and is probably due for some positive regression in terms of his walks is interesting to me, but I don't have a lot of faith there. I feel like it would just be like a 5% play for me.
So he went 81 pitches against the Phillies 2 starts ago, and that kind of made me believe that they thought he was stretched out enough to kind of get what you need to get out of him. But then he just didn't last very long against the D-back. So I definitely have concerns about what we might expect his length to be at 9,500. I think you talk about discrepancies from site to site, 6K on FanDuel to 9.5 on DK. Like, I think that 9.5 is enough where I might just be out on him. So no Gonsolin for me.
Yeah, the FanDuel price, given that he has a decent pitch count and has been, decent so far in the year, besides the walk issues, I think he could be more in play on FanDuel as just a very cheap option to pay down to get to, whatever you want hitting wise on there. But yeah, I'm with you, Gonsolin. I think I could justify a little more ownership there just because I think you can't have 100% Rodon and some of the other guys, but that's really, especially if Valdez falls off the slate, I think maybe that's where Gonsolin gains a little bit more appeal. Cubs bats going against them, though. Do you find any interest there? I feel like Gonsolin's been good enough. The bullpen also good enough that I don't see a lot of reason to go to the Cubs.
Yeah, not a stack. Maybe just bank with some talent here. Maybe young Jock, a little revenge homer for some fun, but nothing. Not really into a stack here.
Arrieta going on the other side against the Dodgers. He's been a 19% K rate guy in the year, 4.8 xFIP, 1.5 whip. And I feel like these are the kind of numbers going against the Dodgers team that's getting closer to full health. I think could be really dangerous. The walks, getting guys on base, a team who just across the board, everybody gets on base, especially in that top five. Everybody in that top five above a 369 on base percentage against righty pitching since 2019. And I like the Dodgers stack. I think going to them against Arrieta seems like a viable move. Decently hot day in LA today, 77-degree weather, 50% humidity. I think the Dodgers are an appealing team, and it looks like the only ownership will be going to a cheap Cody Bellinger. And I guess I don't know why it's going to Max Muncy, but the lefty splits, I guess, for Arrieta must be the thing there. 215 ISO allowed to lefty since 2019. But if those guys could be only one owns, Gundacker, I feel like going to the Dodgers might be a good move to get to today as a late night hammer.
Yeah, Dodgers have a lot of hits saved up after last night, so be like a pinched hose. They come spraying against Arrieta, and I'm there. I think this is one of their better spots. Implied run totals right there. They're probably going to finish as one of the top 3 or 4 teams in run total. So yeah, give me a Dodger stack for sure.
All right, in the last game on the slate, and we are going to make the hour time. This is a true moment in history here on the MLB Strategy Show. So kudos to Gundacker and, of course, our producer Tyler for hiding the camera for a period of the show, so I didn't have to get distracted by his ravishing good looks. Last game on the slate, Arizona 3.1 implied runs going against Chris Paddack. Chris Paddack's numbers starting to make a little more sense now, up to a 26% K rate, 3.4 xFIP. Earlier in the year, he really looked like he might have taken a big downturn, but it does seem like he's starting to evolve back into the guy we would have liked to have seen. A 13.2% swing strike rate's an improvement from the 11.8% he's had since 2019. Chase rate basically in line, though down a little bit. He's facing an Arizona team that strikes out at a 25% clip, and we'll be in San Diego today with 70% humidity, 70-degree weather, but probably not great hitting conditions. Paddack's a solid play. Like, I like him at this price tag. I like the ownership. I don't love 22% ownership. Does look a little bit over leveraged according to the top pitchers tool, but Paddack's numbers, Gundacker, I feel like he's one guy where I was down on him to start the year and didn't think that the numbers were there. And we'd actually talked about it on a few shows, I think. And Paddack now, I feel like kind of looking like the guy you'd hoped he would be. Low launch angle as well. Like he's a solid play on the slate, even if he is a little bit overowned.
Yeah, 11 Ks against the Reds is pretty doggone good. And the D-backs and their road struggles have been well documented. So it really a strong spot for Paddack. He hasn't done well against the D-backs this season, but a lot of that is before it looks like he found his groove. So maybe he fixed something in his mechanics halfway through, and now he's looking like the guy we thought could be a top pitcher in the league. And if so, I'd be a buyer in that. His ownership, like you said, maybe doesn't feel amazing, but 22% versus that 14% number. But as shallow as pitching is, he's got to be right there for us. And like I said, D-backs on the road has been a team that you want to kick.
Yeah, and it's also a good bullpen behind Paddack. I would have them graded as actually the best bullpen on the slate, 27% K rate, 3.8 xFIP. So Arizona stacks seem like they should not be in order here, no matter what the situation. And Arizona just bad across the board against right-hand pitching. Worth pointing out, they also have a 128 ISO against righties. So also 79 WRC plus. So Paddack, I think, watch the ownership for tournaments, but probably the cash game option too. A lot of good things going for Paddack in this spot. Corbin Martin going on the other side. I guess more than an opener, probably closer to a long reliever than a full starter, but on the year, he's only faced 79 batters, but has a 6.1 xFIP, 300 batting average allowed, 16.5% K rate, all really bad marks, along with a 2.04 whip. It comes with a 15% walk rate. So Corbin Martin's not been looking good, giving up an 11% barrel ball rate and a 16-degree launch angle. And Corbin Martin's projection from Awesemo is not bad, which I'm kind of surprised by. At the $5,400 price tag, he does have a projection of 13.5 fantasy points, and according to the top pitcher stool, has a 29% chance to be a top value pitcher. He won't be owned, so I guess you can make the case to play some Corbin Martin, and maybe he'll just regress to something closer to league average than what he's been so far. But I think the Padres stack is the more appealing option to me, Gundacker. Like Martin at no ownership, you can play a little bit, it won't hurt you. But the Padres, I think, could really take advantage if Martin is the guy we've seen so far, who's not getting strikeouts, not missing bats at all, and giving up a ton of power. So do you like Martin at all, given the price point? And I guess, how are you feeling about that Padres stack that currently looks underowned with the top stacks tool?
Yeah, no Martin for me since the beginning of last year. On average, with a 1.9 whip over 2 this season alone. Padres are the most aggressive base running team in baseball. So if you're going to give them free bases, they're going to steal on you. And then we know that they have menacing power. So this is an extremely high upside spot for the Padres offense. And you could parlay stolen base potential with their power. And Martin, you talked about the Padres being the best bullpen potentially on this slate. The D-backs have a case to being the worst bullpen. And this is just like a really, really good spot for the Padres offense.
This could be one of those 10-0 spots, I feel like, in the game. So definitely one to keep an eye on here, and then probably a good probability of Paddock getting the win too on his side. Not that's something you're necessarily trying to account for, but minus 289 money line for him today. Things are probably going to him getting those extra points as well. And we did it 1 hour flat. Gundacker, give the people the plugs. They should, of course, be following you on social media at Gundacker, but tell people where you're up to and where they can see you next or see whatever you're working on next.
Yeah, just twitter.com/Gundacker. I got way too much weird stuff going on to plug.
Yeah, so that's the hub there. Go follow at Gundacker. Follow me at Chris Spags, as well as I mentioned on yesterday's Live Before Lock show. I'm taking the summer off basically from Awesemo and then seeing where the wind takes me after that for the NFL season. So come join me on Live Before Lock later today with Terry. It'll be my last show here for a little bit, though. You can always follow me on Twitter at Chris Spags to see where things are going next. And of course, make sure to follow at Awesemo_com to check out all the content we have going on the site, on the YouTube, all throughout the day. Podcasts, everything goes through there. And there are sometimes flash giveaways on the Awesemo_com handle as well that we don't get time to hit on these shows. So go follow that, check it out for yourself, and make sure to come back later today. Deeper dive, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific time will be starting then, and then Live Before Lock as well with me and Terry. So hang out with us then. See you guys. Enjoy the rest of your days, and good luck.